Welcome to the Rub Some Dirt on It podcast. I'm Coach Brian, and today I have a good friend of mine, Coach Donald Wynn.
Yes.
So thank you for being here. Excited to kind of launch this new endeavor of starting a youth sports podcast, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about in a lot of different angles. So we have the fortunate part of having our sons in the same grade, playing the same sports all the time. And
all the time.
I coach two of them. You coach a couple of them. You also have a daughter, so I'm interested in that.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit about what sports you coach right now.
Okay, so right now I coach girls basketball, 4th and 5th grade girls basketball, and then I coach Jack in baseball. First, thanks for having me on the show. So, but I coach my daughter in basketball, and I coach Jack in baseball. I used to coach Ella in softball, but she now more is the cheer. She likes to do the cheer and the tumbling.
So she's left softball and moved on to cheer.
She has left softball, yes. It wasn't her thing. I think she tried it just because Dad played baseball, so she was like, I want to, spend some time with him, and I enjoyed it with her, but she just did not like softball as much as she thought she was going to.
Now, that's something I wanted to ask you about. I was looking forward to asking you about. Tell me about your sports background.
Okay. So I grew up in Florence, South Carolina. I played every sport that you could think of except soccer. Just it never fell within the time frame that I could play it. But I grew up playing baseball, football, basketball. People are going to shocked to hear this, but my love is basketball. I love basketball. But I played baseball all throughout, went to college, played baseball. And so when I graduated from college, I had played it so much that I was like, I'm done. I can't do this. I don't want to touch a baseball. I don't want to see baseball. So I didn't go to any baseball games or do anything for like 2 years. And then I got the itch. I wanted to do something. And so I reached out to the guy that was my boss at work, and I said, hey, I want to coach in Columbia, but I don't know where to go or who to, talk to about doing that. And so he said, hey, I got a guy. And he runs Dentsville Dixie Youth out in Polo Road. Yeah. So I was like, okay. And so I get in touch with him. He says, hey, I can't make you a head coach, but I can put you as assistant coach. I said, perfect. I'll start there. And so I get on this guy's team, never met him. And he said, I've got a son. It's my son's team. I have a younger son that I'm also coaching his team as well. And he said, so I'm going to miss the first practice. You got to be the head coach for the first practice. I was like, great. So here I am, 24 years old, and I'm coaching 12 and 13-year-olds. And I was like, this is going to be disaster. And long story short, we ended up coaching together, and we developed a great friendship, still friends to this day. And I've seen both of his sons they have babies now. So that is,
wow.
Yeah. So, I'm graduating and everything. So it's been a whirlwind of events. But, when I started coaching with him, I coached his oldest son first, the 13-year-old. And then the next year, Ty, his youngest son, was like, I want Donald to coach our team. And he was like, Dad, can he be the head coach and you just be the assistant coach? And he was like, absolutely. So we coached and we won our league. And we went on and coached All-Stars together. And that was, incredible. It was fun to do, especially for me. I didn't have any kids at the time. It was just, which a lot of people thought was weird. They were like, why does this guy want to be around? Because, but I just enjoyed it. And Jeff, embraced it. Like, he was like, this is great. I can let him be who he wants to be out here with these kids, and he can teach something, and I can help him along the way. And so we did that. And then all of a sudden it developed. His oldest son came and said, hey, like my buddies and I, we play for the high school baseball team, but we also want during the summer to play travel ball. Is there any way, would you have any interest in doing travel ball, Dad? And he was like, well, he's like, Donald will do it. He was like, he would love to do it. And so being the accountant that he was, he laid it all out there. We got 13 kids. We got uniforms, 2 pair of uniforms, hats, everything that you could have, bats and bags for them. I mean, we did it, and Jeff did it, all within a budget because he's an accountant. Mm-hmm. We also lined up all the tournaments for the summer and this fall. And when we got into the fall, Jeff was so keen on how I love to go to USC football games. So he was like, every home football game, we didn't have a tournament. So we did it only on the away game. So it was fun. And we did that for 3 years. And at one point, we were ranked number 2 in the country in USSSA in baseball. Yes, we were.
How many days a week were you practicing?
Oh, we were practicing like 3 or 4 days a week. I mean, it was a lot. When the fall hit, some of the guys played football, and they would come directly from football and go practice baseball and then go home and do their schoolwork and everything. But yeah, we were practicing, and we had 3 guys that got drafted, and 2 of them played at the University of South Carolina. And, we had a team, we had a squad. It was fun. And we traveled and we did things together, and, I met a lot of great people doing that. So,
I mean, I would imagine it's not like some of it's the luck of the draw, right? You got kids that are in a certain area, but you have to develop them in order to get that kind of results.
Right. And develop it. There was also, like, I had coached in the rec, so I saw those kids play at a younger age, and I was like, all right, he's a ball player. All right, he's coachable. I can coach him. And that's what it's all about. I mean,
what are some of the things you look for when you see that kid, oh, he's coachable or he's a baller? What are the things that you are keying in on that tells you that?
Well, first and foremost is attitude. That's the big thing. And a lot of people don't understand this, that don't coach. Like a lot of parents, I mean, you deal with this. A lot of parents don't realize the first thing that most coaches look at is a kid's attitude. Is he coachable? And does he show up like ready to go? Like if he's just out there lollygagging, not ready to do it, it's going to be miserable for you and for him. Or for her, for that matter. But that's what I look at. And then secondly is you look at the talent. Like you look at, all right, can he throw? Can he hit? Can they kick a ball? Can they shoot the basketball? Can they do this? Can they do this, the little things? Or do I have to coach them from start all the way to finish? Can I get them to the finished product, really? Yeah. That's what I look for. But with those guys, I watched them grow. And so I knew, like, all right, he's a good guy. Parents a little crazy, but I can deal with that, But that's
parents are always the wild card.
That's right. And a lot of people don't realize as a coach that's one thing you look at. You look at the kids, but you also read the parents too. You're like, am I going to get along with this parent, or am I going to have trouble? Like, am I going to have to answer a bunch of questions because their kid's not playing a certain position or their kid's not playing enough? Well, you have to balance it out by saying, okay, well, they're not going to be professional athletes. Those are dime a dozen, right? I mean, baseball players are dime a dozen. So not every kid's going to be a professional athlete. Those are few and far between. And you just have to know that it's all about having fun. That's the main thing. Is I try to make sure that Jack and Ella and all of his friends on his team and the kids that I coach, the main thing is, did they have fun today and did they learn something?
So would you call that your coaching philosophy?
Yes. I would say that I want them to have fun. And I always tell my kids this whenever they leave practice. I want you to, on the ride home, I don't want you to look at your parents' phones. I don't want you to go home and watch television. I want you to talk to your parents in the car like adults, like have a conversation with your parents. I want you to tell them what you learned at school, what you learned at practice, and what did you have fun. Talk about something that was fun that day.
Yeah.
And so that way you have a full-on conversation with your parents. And then it just makes it fun for them because I find with my own son that he talks about what he did at practice, what did he learn? And you know as well as I do, coaching your own son, it can be tricky. You kind of sometimes, like, I get assistant coaches that know what they're doing. So I can say, you coach Jack, I'll coach the other guys. Right. And because he's just not going to listen to me every time.
And we've played that game for us, the two of us.
Yes.
But it is, now I have 3 boys and a 4th one now, but they're all very different in their personality. All of them are good athletes. They got good genes. Thank you. But it's one of those things where you kind of guard yourself against. I coach Hollis way harder than I coach anyone else. 1, I know he can take it. 2, I see the potential. But Everett, I am more guarded with how I approach him. And he's the more naturally gifted.
Yes.
And it's like, if I can just mold you two together, we have something powerful here. So I understand what I need to do to help Everett get better. And I have to help Hollis understand what he has to do to get better, because they both have great potential, but it's one of those things where it's frustrating as the dad coach,
right,
to see them doing not what you want them to do. So I typically take the approach of, you got to be the leader, help the others learn what they're supposed to do. And I guess my coaching philosophy is similar to yours, right? But I think of it as fundamentals, right? We got to have some fun. We got to make sure that you're liking this sport that you're playing, so you continue to play it.
That's right.
But at the same time, we're going to learn how to catch a ground ball. We're going to learn how to kick. We're going to learn how to do the basic things that allow you to actually compete and win. And because it's not all about winning, obviously, at this age, but you got to have the fundamentals.
Correct.
Otherwise, you're just, I'm not a babysitter.
No.
And that's the approach I take with the teams. If you don't want to be here, if you want to sit over here on the grass, fine. I'm not dealing with you. If you want to learn something, come learn, have some fun.
Right.
But you were talking about coaching like 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot different than the 4-year-olds. Like, I run the gamut.
Yeah.
The 4-year-olds all the way up to 9, and now it'll just keep going. But
correct, yeah.
And it's a different subtlety when you're doing 6 and 5-year-olds and 13-year-olds, right?
Yes. Coaching a 13-year-old who has an attention span of, I would say, boys 15 minutes, and then you have going backwards to kids that are 11 and 12, all the way down to 4 and 5 and 6. They have an attention span of, you may get 3 minutes of like full on attention. So in those 3 minutes, it's very important that you, like you said, you hit those fundamentals as fast as you can and make sure that they understand what they're going to do. It's not always going to work out.
Nope.
But you pray that you're like, all right, I think he learned it. All right, we're going to see. But, or she learned it. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I can say he, but, she is the same way. I mean, girls they're a little bit more in tune to paying attention because they want to learn, and they're like, I look at especially little girls in softball and basketball, like they're like, because I don't see, now that I see there are some women coaches, especially like Dawn Staley, like who I adore. I told my daughter, I'm like, you don't realize that you went to Dawn Staley's camp, you're hanging out taking pictures with her. She's like probably top 15 most recognized women athlete in the world, and you're just hanging out with her like casually. But a lot of guys coach the girls at their young age. Like, it's a lot of their dads. And so you watch them and they're just paying attention. Like, they're just focused. As opposed to the boys, this, they're kicking their balls. They're running around, throwing the baseball everywhere. You have to like grab them by the shoulders and you're like, sit down for 3 seconds. I just need you to focus. So, but I was fortunate. My dad coached me
Good.
And
That's going to be my next question. Was your dad a coach?
Yes. My dad was a coach. And my dad did similar to what I did. He started coaching before he had kids. I'm going to brag on my dad. He coached in Florence for like 35 years, and I think he won 32 championships.
In baseball?
In baseball.
Wow.
And he was just a phenomenal guy. But if he were alive, he would say to you that his greatest accomplishment was not winning. His was getting the letters from the kids when they were adults telling him how much he meant to them in their lives. And when he passed away, my cousin who did his eulogy read a lot of those letters. And so it just meant a lot to me. It meant a lot to my mom just to hear other people say, you know, what my dad meant to them. So, so I take that and I'm like, all right, I know I'm Jack's dad. I know I'm Ella's dad when I'm coaching, but I'm also, I don't know, I have to portray that to these kids as well. I have to teach them something, and maybe I will affect their life some way that they look up to me as well. So that's the mentality I also take into it.
That's wonderful. My dad was a coach as well. Mm-hmm. He coached soccer, and because no one else would or knew how to do it or whatever, he was just like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because I played soccer up through the 8th grade, and then you had to pick soccer or football. Mm-hmm. Football was a no-brainer.
Right.
Down here, because I grew up in Wisconsin, mm-hmm. so in obviously South Carolina, I don't know if it was the case when you were playing, but now it's either baseball or soccer.
Right.
You have to choose. So it's like, well, that's the choice my kids are going to have to make, baseball or soccer.
Right.
I had to choose baseball or soccer or football. Mm-hmm. So baseball was the only option in the spring, or you could do golf, but
yeah,
no.
Yeah. You want to be with your buddies.
Yeah. I played basketball, mm-hmm. and because it was either basketball or wrestling, mm-hmm. and you want to be in a gym when it's cold out. So but my dad started coaching soccer. He coached baseball, and then our high school baseball coach just decided he didn't want to coach anymore. So my last 2 years of high school, my dad coached our high school team.
Oh, okay.
So he was just like, they were like, hey, will you do it? And
yeah.
He did it. And I have a great picture of him walking off the mound when he just came out for a mound visit. Mm-hmm. And he was a construction worker. Mm-hmm. So he had like thick, rough, big hands. Mm-hmm. And he would poke my chest. Like, boom, boom, boom. It would hurt so bad. But he was a great baseball coach. So I never really wanted to coach sport. Like, I played football, went through the whole thing, mm-hmm. college football, and I never was like, yeah, I can't wait to coach. Like, I never got that itch.
Yeah.
I got into it because I looked at myself going, okay, I want my kids to play sports.
Yeah.
And since I know something about it, I've played all the sports growing up throughout my entire life, mm-hmm. I can give them the best possibility. Because you hear all these coaches, like, sometimes it's the luck of the draw, especially with the YMCA.
Right.
And that's the biggest rec league around. Mm-hmm. So you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
And I didn't want that unknown. And I figured I'm going to be at the practices anyway.
Right.
I might as well be in charge of doing it.
That's right.
So that's how I got into it.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things where it's like I'm doing it for them, mm-hmm. but also I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And my dad, he kind of did it the same way. He never got to play sports growing up. Mm. I mean, he played sports growing up in the neighborhood, mm-hmm. but his mom wouldn't let him play high school sports.
Oh.
And he was like a phenomenal athlete. Like he could walk the length of a basketball court on his hands.
Oh.
Like, incredibly strong, incredibly fast.
Yeah.
Stories of like just him crushing the baseball. But his mom said, sports isn't going to lead to anything. You need to get an education. And he wasn't allowed to play high school sports until he was accepted into college. So the spring of his senior year, he finally was able to run track, and he did like the 110-meter hurdles. And but because of that, he was always very accommodating to allowing us to play sports,
Right.
and encouraging about it. So taking that through for my kids is, there's so many valuable things that you can learn from playing sports.
Absolutely.
So I guess a question I have for you is, what are some of the tips that you would give to parents wanting to get involved with their kids, even if they haven't played sports before?
That's a good question. So first, I would say it's twofold, really, right? Because you have the parents that played it, and then you have some of the parents, like you said, that never played it. And some of the parents that played it that just never went on or did anything after rec ball or high school or whatever, they live vicariously through their kids. And we see it, you see it, I see it all the time. And they don't know how to turn it off. Like when they get out there, it's like it's their way or the highway, and you can't coach that way. So my first tip would be, make sure that you're in it for your kids. You're not doing it for yourself. And that your kid really wants to play. Because I see a lot of it where a lot of kids don't want to play it. They're just doing it because their parents want them to do it. They need
an activity.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. Like, I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's the bad rap about youth sports, is that there's parents out there and they're psychos, and they're living vicariously through their kids, right? And if you think about it, the coaches that at least got to college and played in college in some capacity are not vicariously living through their kids.
No.
It's all the parents that didn't quite do it.
It is 100%. I never see another, when I talk to a dad that played a sport in college, like he's like, I could care less if my son plays it. Like if Jack doesn't play baseball, I will be okay with it. I mean, I think his favorite sport is soccer.
I had mentioned this to you before.
Yeah.
He is I could see him playing soccer because he's naturally enjoys it and good at it.
Yeah.
And
so if he doesn't play, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I mean, I will. Yeah, of course, I want him to play baseball.
I'd rather go watch a baseball game than a soccer game.
Correct. But I have started to, like soccer. I've, been watching it more, and now I understand it. So I know where he's coming from, and it is fun. I mean, to get out there, even in the backyard with him and play it, like it's fun to do.
It's really a perfect sport for, developing under 7 age.
Correct. And making them understand that, the winning and losing aspect, because they see it, they know. Even when you don't keep score when you're 4 or 5 years old,
and they're not keeping score, but what's the score? What's the score?
Yes.
Everyone's keeping
so they
track.
know, and you have to.
But that's a hard thing, right? So a lot of recreational sports is designed. Obviously, little league and baseball, you start getting into keeping score and winners and playoffs and all that stuff. But how do you balance the trying to win, having fun, and not putting so much pressure on everybody to be like, yeah, it's win or nothing? Right?
Yeah.
Do you have a way to do that?
So, I try. So I am very, when I'm in the sport, like I always take the Herm Edwards approach. You play to win the game, right? I always tell my wife that, because she is, if she wins or she loses, it's okay. It doesn't matter to her. But of course, when you lose, you're like, you feel it. And as a super competitive person, I'm like, well, I don't want to like lose. I want to win. And I always tell her this, and we joke about this because like South Carolina will lose a football game or a basketball game. And I'm like, what? And I'm like frustrated for like, I would say probably 20 minutes. I'm like, I get over it. But she's like, why does it matter? There's a bunch of kids that doesn't mean anything to your life. It's not going to affect you one way or other. I'm like, I always tell her, I'm like, that's a loser's mentality right there. I'm like, it's not. I'm like, you play to win the game. That's like, right. You don't think those guys are thinking the same thing? I said, they want to win. And, but to your point, I take an approach of, I was fortunate. I will say this. So the first college that I went to, we had
Where did you go to college?
I went to junior college first. I was told by a scout I needed to go to a junior college because they wanted to pick me up. I was a pitcher, and so I went there and to USC Salkehatchie down in Allendale, South Carolina, and played there. In my first year, we were trash. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. We had a terrible year. We lost. I think we won 9 ball games. I think we were 9-36. It was bad. And it helped me a lot. I mean, I will say I learned a lot at that moment because I grew up and I won at everything. Like I don't think I didn't win like first or second place in all of the teams that I played on growing up. I mean, even my high school baseball team, we were great. I mean, we went to the playoffs every year, had a winning record. We won our region like 2 of the 4 years I was in high school. So, I mean, I won. I was used to winning. And so when I got to college and it hit you like a ton of bricks, you almost become numb to it. Like you just like you accept it and you start accepting it a little bit better. But I will say the moment that you win again and then you lose, you get pissed again. You're like, why did I lose again? And so it helped me though, like understand and how to lose gracefully. Like and that's one thing I have to teach Jack, I have to teach Ella, because Jack is like Elizabeth. Like if they win or lose, like he gets upset if they don't win, but he's like, okay. Which I think is great. Ella, on the other hand, she's spitting nails. Like, why did we lose? I mean, she's competitive. I mean, she even said it last weekend. We were at the beach and we were playing just a little board game. And she said, I'm going to sit this game out because if I lose, I know you guys are going to see a side of me that I don't want you, because we were with friends. Yeah. And she's like, I don't want you to see this side of me. So back to your point though, I needed that in college to learn to lose the gracefully, like, and accept it. Like, it's not the end of the world. Yes, it sucks, but we can move on. And now that I know that, when I go out there and coach, do I want to win? Absolutely. Am I coaching my kids to win? Absolutely. If we don't win, is it the end of the world? No. I will accept it, and I will teach the kids, like, hey, guys, tough break. We had a bad game. It is what it is. We're going to practice and get better so that the outcome is in our favor next time. And that's the way you have to approach it, because especially with kids, because I've seen Everett, I've seen Jack, I've seen Hollis, I've seen Hayes, I've seen Ryland. They all get frustrated. I mean, and they're because they're young kids, they're almost to the point of tears because they just lost the game and they thought they should have won. And,
so we had that big loss for soccer.
Yeah.
And it was hard. The only game we lost.
Yeah.
And I think we probably could have won it.
Absolutely.
And I think about it, and I think we went to Target after that.
Yeah.
and Elaine was like, "What's wrong?" I'm just like, "Just let me be."
Yeah.
Like, this is going to take a little while.
Yeah, that stings.
Just let me come down. Like, because I feel like I am a self-aware coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I analyze what could I have done better?
Yep.
How could I have put the kids in a better position?
Mm-hmm.
How could I have manipulated my subbing differently in order to give us a better shot?
Mm-hmm.
And it's whatever sport, it's all the sports I'm doing this. And so it's like Carolina football, my sports teams that I am fans of, I learned a long time ago, shortly after I was done playing, I don't care. I love Carolina football.
Right.
But if they lose, it's about 20 minutes that I give it.
Yeah.
Because I don't have any control over it.
Right.
So I can't let that affect my day in any way. But I do have control over the team that I'm coaching and trying to find ways to allow them to learn through the losses. Like, what did we learn? What did you guys learn by this loss so we can improve and move on? And that's what I turn back to. And one of our baseball seasons, the seasons all run together when you go fall and spring every
That's
year.
right. Yeah.
But one of our seasons, probably a year or two ago, we did not win a game until the very last game of the year. And the last game of the year wasn't against some other bad team. It was like a decent team that we ended up beating. But you could see the improvement of the team all season long, and they just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and we finally broke through. And that is so rewarding that the losses, they come and go.
That's right.
But sometimes you remember those losses, but sometimes it's a balance that you get to play and enjoy it, love
Right.
sports, right? But trying to figure out how to allow them to learn from those losses is
That's
kind of
right.
what I rely on in order to make it easier to swallow.
Right. Yeah. Yes. You're right. And that's funny that you say that, because like after a loss, I will have like a little huddle, especially with like the girls basketball team. We're doing the best we can. I mean, it's girls basketball, and they're learning, and especially now, like that because I don't know how your sons play it, but look, with Ella, like they can't go outside of the box. Like the 3-point line, they can only guard within the 3-point line. So if they come within the 3-point line, and so we've had 6 games now, and of the 4 losses that we have, they are these girls that we're playing. They can shoot beyond it's like not a real 3-point line, but it's a half court. Like we're playing like not the full court, but the side court kind of. And so when they shoot and they make the basket, there's no defense because they can't go outside of that arc, and so it frustrates them. It also frustrates me because I'm like, why can't they just go out and guard? But at the end of the game, I go, what did you guys learn today? Like, what did you learn from this loss? Like, what could you have done better? And like, I have this one girl on my team. Like, she's very talented athletically, but I just need her to like just slow down. Like, everything's in a fast pace. Like, she's always in a hurry. And I'm like, if basketball is a game of, you got to be quick, but you can't be fast. You got to be, in control is what I always tell her. Yeah. And she says, I think it finally clicked last game. She was like, I've got to be more in control. Like, I can't run as fast as I can down the court and try to throw the ball up off the backboard because it's going to bounce back to half court. And so,
been there.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I asked them after every loss, even if it's with the guy with the boys. Sorry, my phone's ringing. But I always say, like, what did you learn? What could we do better? And if once you do that, they'll tell you, because boys are open books. When they're around their friends, they'll tell you what they learned, and they'll even point it out, like, well, he needs to do this too. And you're like, all right, guys, like.
So that's an interesting thing right there. They all have an idea of who the best player is and why. And it's not always the same person.
Or who they think the best player is. That's right.
And you hear them and you go, oh, really? Okay. But they also try to ask you questions like, what do you think about so-and-so? And that is something I guard against in terms of being fair and honest about the person they're asking about without they can't hear any negativity thoughts that I might have about that player.
Absolutely.
Because it would just be a disaster. Even though I'm thinking the exact same thing they're thinking, but I'm never going to say that.
I'm never say it.
I'm just going to be like, well, he's trying hard.
Yeah.
And he's,
Yes. So you're right. In the car home, they always ask you questions. And I have to guard against it. I have the conversation with my wife. I don't have the conversation with the kids, because you never know what they're going to say.
Right.
And, my wife and I have we kind of have this thing like save it for the car. If you're out somewhere and somebody does something and you want to say something and you're like, she's like, nope, not the time. Save it for the car. I'm like, okay. And, so I save it for home in the bedroom. I'm like, hey, and we have that conversation, and she's like, please tell me you didn't say that in front of Jack or Ella. And I'm like, absolutely not, because I know the first thing that's going to happen is that kid's going to say something, or some kid's going to say something, and they're going to be like, well, that's not the case. And, then you have bad news on your hand. But, no, it's you. As a coach, you see that a lot too. And it's also, you got to be careful about the parents too, and what you say about a kid on your team's parent.
Yes.
As much as you want to say something, you have to be careful. And you also have to be careful on how you address it with the parent. Like, if you see them being just overreacting over anything, you have to also be careful how you address it. And that's a big thing.
So that seems kind of somewhat rhetorical, but
yeah,
it's a lot of pressure and responsibility and dynamics that you put on a volunteer coach. Like, we are not getting paid to this. This is part of my volunteering of the month. Is I coach every single sport I can.
Exactly.
And I'm supposed to be the psychologist, the teacher, the role model.
Absolutely.
And, oh, by the way, you just got to show up and take this junky equipment that we have for you and make it work.
Exactly.
In an hour to practice and teach them all this stuff.
Yes, if we get an hour, because, like I said, they have an attention span that's, very small. So
what is it that you do that allows you the freedom to coach?
With my job?
Yeah.
Oh, so
my opinion is there's very few types of jobs that you can actually do this.
Yeah. So I am an account exec at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I do national accounts, national sales, really. And I have learned from my wife how to manage a schedule. I'll say that. And so I do a lot of work in the morning and free up my afternoons, probably around 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with my kids and coach and do everything until about 8 o'clock at night. And then I go back to work. I work until about 11, and then I'll do it all over again the next day. So that's really what has helped me, is learning how to manage my work schedule so I can have time with my schedule. And it also helps too, like the why and where we coach baseball and the basketball schedules come out in time. Or take the basketball off.
You have a roughly idea of how it's going to function.
Exactly. And so where and when you need to be and how it works. Now, this year in baseball is going to be a little difficult because I'm traveling. We supposed to start practice this weekend, and I'm traveling next weekend, the week after that, and then I have something else that I have to do the week following. And so I'm going to be late to practice on that one, but still I'm going to miss some practices. Mm-hmm. And do I feel bad about it? Absolutely. But it goes with the pressure you feel too. Like, you feel that pressure, not only coaching and being at practice on time, is being at games on time. And if you miss a game, you also feel the pressure. They're like, well, he's not even here. And I'm like, well, I want to tell the parents, which I do tell the parents. I learned from my dad. Again, I learned from my dad is before the first practice, you have a parent after the first practice, you have a parent meeting with all the parents, and you lay out, like, listen, this is how I coach. This is how I'm going to do things. And you tell them, like, I have a job, so this isn't my career. So I may not be here all the time, but I've picked good assistant coaches that will help your son in their development. And so you really rely on that too. You know? So
definitely a spouse that understands.
Yes.
Although she constantly wanting to go on a vacation or something, I'm like, I can't. I'm the coach.
Yes.
They have to be at the game.
Yeah.
Occasionally, if something comes up where we've planned it way ahead of time.
Exactly. Do you remember that conversation that we had at dinner where you watched your son and daughter tell me that they want me to be the coach, and you said, yeah, you should do that? Well, I'm reminding you, we can't go to town this weekend because we have this practice.
That's
so.
right. That's right. So you are finishing up girls basketball.
That's right.
And how many more weeks of that do you have left?
So we have 2 more weeks and then the playoffs start,
Okay.
Which this is our first full year where they have the playoffs in Ella's age. So I don't know if we'll make the playoffs. I think every team may make the playoffs, but I don't know.
It is church league, right?
Exactly, right? So I think we will. But the good news is like that'll be held during the week instead of on the weekend. So it'll free up some time.
Nice. But you had baseball evaluations last night?
I did.
How'd that go?
It went well. Again,
Did you do your draft right away? Or?
you do your draft right after. So the pressure, again, we talk about this pressure of being a volunteer coach, and you know as well as I do, it's like through the Y we get lucky because they're like, hey, I want to be on Arnold's team. They put you on Brian Arnold's team. You know, with the baseball, it doesn't work that way. And so I get, multiple text messages and you hear things and you're like, and you want to get these kids on your team. You do. But you have no clue how this guy in front of you or 3 seats in front of you or behind you is going to draft because you're trying to get all these kids. And at the same time, too, you have to realize, like, I want to win. Right? So,
I don't want to stink.
Yeah. So you have to, you just have to.
Which ones are worth trading for?
That's correct. And so.
Is that dad going to be an assistant coach? Coach pitch? Are you doing coach
pitch?
Still?
Do I have a pitcher?
Do I have a pitcher?
Yeah. And because if it's not, I don't want to pitch because I want to coach the kids and be third base coach and coach them during the game because when you pitch, you can't coach. When you're pitching, like that's a no. And so it's a lot of pressure, but yeah, we had the draft. It went well. I felt like I got a good team. But yeah, we'll see how that, see how it plays out.
Next week, you said?
We have practice on Sunday.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So, it's going to be cold.
We're in a different little league, obviously. But,
yeah.
We do our evaluations the first and second. And then we start practice on the 10th, the week of the 10th. So
okay.
we got a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
We're finishing up basketball.
Yeah. I wish we would finish up basketball too, but they just want to go ahead and get it started. Yeah. Mainly because, as well as a lot of the kids that play in the league, both the leagues, play summer ball, and they play the travel ball. So they don't want the leagues to bleed into one another, really.
So I didn't coach basketball this year. I coached it last winter, but I didn't coach it this winter because we had the baby coming. I was like, I'm not taking that on too.
Yeah.
So I'll probably do it again. But we ended up. So last year, and you helped me coach. You filled in because I couldn't get there and stuff. So I don't think I'm going to have the boys do summer flag football.
I could see that. Yeah.
Because baseball, especially for our league, they go into All-Stars and then the All-Star tournaments. It's going to be mid-June.
Well, that's why you missed some of the games because of the All-Stars, right?
So Hollis, I didn't coach his team, but he went to one game, and that's it. No practices, no other games. He was only available for one game because he was playing baseball on the All-Star team going to state.
Right.
So you can't guarantee you're going to go to state all the time, but you have that all-star experience after that puts you mid-June before you're free.
Right.
And you miss half of the football season, and it's just like, well,
So
it's hot as.
I'm glad. Hey, it's hot. They didn't even. 3 games were canceled because of the weather.
Mm-hmm.
So, we might not play it either, just because.
And if they're so they also got onto a travel team, so we'll have some sort of travel baseball.
Right.
But I kind of want them we might take an extra week in Wisconsin and just be a lot more loose this summer.
Right.
They're not going to miss it. Hollis is really itching to play tackle football.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to weigh when that starts. I didn't start playing until I was 10. I don't really think he should start playing until he's got a late fall birthday, so he's going to be almost 10. But so that's kind of where I'm balancing all that decision making. But
no, it's a lot because, like you said, we coach, but they also have a life too outside of sports, and I feel like it does take up a lot of time. I mean, like we have to, because Ella, my daughter, goes to camp for 3 weeks during the summer. I mean, she's gone for 3 weeks. So Elizabeth and I are trying to fit in as much as we can in time with her because she's gone at the end of the summer, and then she gets home, and in 3 days she's back to school. So it's like, she gets home that Friday, and then Monday she's back at school, or Tuesday she's back at school. You're like, well, it was good to see you,
Yeah.
So we were with Jack most of the time, and fortunate for us, we get to send him with grandparents, with my mom, and he'll get to go with Elizabeth's mom and dad. But it comes back to, we just got to find time and really.
And for having 3 boys, though, I need to structure activity all the time.
Yeah.
Because if we have a day where don't have something to do, it is hectic at home. It's like, get them out of here. So it feels like a lot sometimes, but I would rather have something to do every day of the week than nothing.
Right.
I don't mind it every single day, but obviously I want to be able to go swimming and do some fun stuff outside of, hey, you have practice, you have a sport. And
that's another thing.
Hollis just got his black belt, so we just rotated karate in there.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I forgot about swimming too. Both my kids swim. Fortunately, I don't coach that, but still, they still have to do that. I mean, that takes up the entire month of June. So, and that's a meet every Monday and Thursday with practices every single morning before 8:00. So, I mean, so you think about it. They go from being at school and waking up early every single morning to still having to wake up early just to go practice for swimming. Now, do they complain about that? Absolutely. But do they love when they swim at the meets? Yeah. So,
well, Donald, I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. I feel it's been very enlightening. It's going to be like it's going to be like youth coach therapy every week.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you back sometime.
Yeah.
I have one sports trivia question for you before we leave.
Let's see.
There are 2 baseball teams that don't end with the letter S.
Yeah.
Do you
the
know?
Red Sox and the White Sox.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rub Some Dirt on It podcast. I'm Coach Brian. Thank you to my guest, Donald Wynn. We'll see you next time.